Hola a todos. Hoy les voy a enseñar a dar un consejo en español. Today I'm going to teach you how to give advice in Spanish. Now, as you see, the expression is dar un consejo. Okay? Now, what I must tell you is that these are direct ways that advice can be given. There are other ways, but those other ways are either indirect or they express obligation rather than advice. Okay? So let's look at the indirect way. So if someone approaches you and asks you, ¿Qué hago? What do I do? You can give them advice, but phrase it as a question. For example, has hablado con tu maestra? Have you spoken with your teacher? No, I asked that person a question, but if you study it, I have actually given them advice indirectly because I have told them I have given them an option as far as what they could actually do, even though I phrased it as a question. Has hablado con tu maestra? So that person now will be like, that's an idea. So you're actually posing an idea to that person. So that's an indirect way that you can provide advice, right? Now, when it comes to the obligation, if you use verbs like tener que, deber, those are more, like I said, those are more for obligations. It's like you have to do this, have to or must. That those convey obligation, meaning that you have to do them or there will be negative consequences, right? I mean, yes, advice, you can say that for advice, but if you're talking about tone, there is a clear difference. When you're advising someone, you're not telling them what to do, okay? You're not telling them what to do. You're actually giving them options as to what they can do, but they ultimately have to make the decision. So obligation and advice are different, okay? Now, another way that we can advise, but again, this is more of an obligation, is to use the imperative. So let's use the same scenario. Someone approaches you and asks you for help, ¿Qué hago? And you tell them, habla con tu maestra. That's a command, right? Remember, when you're advising, you have to put it across as though you are offering solutions, not telling them, well, what they should do, what they have to do, right? All right, so let's continue. The first way that we can offer advice is to use the conditional form of deber followed by que. And this would translate as should. As I said earlier, if you use deber in the present simple, it means must, right? So, deberías estudiar para el examen. You should study for the exam, right? Of course, this is not limited to two, because we can say deberíamos estudiar para el examen. We should study for the exam. Once again, should conveys that advice is being given. It is not an obligation. You can follow it, but you don't have to, okay? 2, hypothetical structures can be used. And when I say hypothetical, I'm referring to conditions with si, right? So, si yo que tú, si yo estuviera en tu lugar, or si yo fuera tú, if I were you. All of these mean if I were you. So we use that at the start, the main clause. And in the subordinate clause, we use the conditional to actually provide the recommendation, okay? And of course, the hypothetical is put in the past subjunctive. This is a very useful structure, although it is very advanced, right? Si yo que tú compraría dos bolígrafos. If I were you, I would buy 2 pens. Si yo fuera tú, haría ejercicio. If I were you, I would work out. And over here, si yo estuviera en tu lugar, dejaría de fumar. If I were in your position or place, I would stop smoking. So this is the second structure. Si yo que tú, si yo fuera tú, si yo estuviera en tu lugar. Followed by the conditional. Yeah. 3. We can use verbs of recommendation such as recomendar, sugerir, aconsejar. Those are going to be the most common, of course. But if you want to provide advice to someone utilizing these verbs, this is the structure that we're going to use. So we use the indirect object pronoun to refer to the person that we are advising. The verb of recommendation, which will agree with the subject, whoever is the advisor, okay? Que, and then the subjunctive, okay? So, te recomiendo que te acuestes. I recommend that you go to bed. So we use te because that relates to tú, which is a second person singular, all right? Recomiendo because we are talking about the first person singular, of course, right? Que te acuestes. So we use the subjunctive. Now, pay attention here. Te sugeriría que llevaras un traje, right? I would suggest that you wear a suit. Now, you would realize that our verb of recommendation, which is sugerir, is actually placed in the conditional. So because it's in the conditional, the verb in the subordinate clause has to be in the past subjunctive. So if we use a conditional with these verbs of recommendation, the past subjunctive must be used in the subordinate clause. So if this were past tense, you already know we would use the past subjunctive because of the tense. But with the conditional is used with the past subjunctive. Okay. If we wanted to make that or convert that to the present tense, we would say te sugiero que lleves un traje. Muy bien. And finally, les aconsejo a los alumnos que toquen la guitarra. So I advise the students to play the guitar. If we want to include the actual recipient of the advice, we put the verb of course we conjugate the verb of recommendation, and then we add a los, whoever, we add whomever, right? So, yeah, les aconsejo a los alumnos que toquen la guitarra. Okay? So these are 3 ways that we can give advice or provide advice directly, okay? There's one more method that we can utilize. So let's get to it. Okay, so we move on to the 4th method, which is going to be the verb poder. We can use poder because poder means to be able to or can, right? So puedes esperar un poco. You can wait a bit. Puedes quedarte en casa. You can stay at home, right? So if someone asks you for advice, you can use poder. And poder is not an obligation. It is offering a suggestion, what you can do, all right? So this is probably the easiest way to give advice. right? Eso es todo por hoy. Espero que ustedes hayan disfrutado de esta lección y que sepan dar un consejo en español. Muchas gracias por ver como siempre y hasta la vista.